Hello and welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills. I'm your host, Tia Young. Please welcome returning guest Kate Celius, who is my co-host for today. Kate is the founder of RE Career, LLC, an organization committed to helping her clients gain economic empowerment. Our special guest today is Director of Development at New Hope Housing, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending homelessness in Northern Virginia since June 2014. In his position, our special guest is responsible for all private fundraising, including foundation grants, special events, and community research. Please welcome Jan Michael Sacharko to Skills to Pay the Bills.
Thanks for having me
Jan,
here.
thank you. And Kate, good to see you back again.
Thank you.
We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to get right into it. Now, Jan, you are the Director of Development at New Hope Housing. Tell us all about New Hope Housing and what prepared you for the many hats that I'm assuming that you wear.
Well, New Hope Housing has a 40-year history, and so I won't be able to go into all of it. But New Hope Housing, it's founded here in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax County, back in the late 70s, really to try to address what people saw as a growing homelessness issue. I say there must have been something in the water for social justice in the 70s because a lot of local organizations all started within a few years of each other. But it started out very basically as there were no permanent homeless shelters in Fairfax as late as 77. It was all just temporary church basements, certain things like this. So it said, let's start with the shelter and see where we go. And so they opened in 78 as an 8-bed shelter. Today we have over 25 programs in multiple jurisdictions, from street outreach to shelter to permanent housing for both families and adults, and really sort of specializing. We will serve everyone who comes to us, but more or less specializing in people who might have special needs or disabilities that are really being edged out of housing due to costs and whatnot. My role, my history, I actually got to this area. I'm originally from Maine. I got here I went to Georgetown University and started volunteering with a homeless group in DC. It was a mom and pop nonprofit that rebuilt homes for homeless families, mostly immigrants and refugees. Just absolutely fell in love with the work. And as early as 2002, when I was an AmeriCorps volunteer with them, I was actually given an empty apartment, said, do the carpet, do the paint, do the drapes, do this, do that, do that. We've got a family waiting to move in, and the faster you get this apartment ready and livable, the faster this family isn't homeless anymore. Wow. And that's incredible motivation. So 72 hours later, and I think I worked all of them, we were moving a family in. And to actually be a part of that, it was like, this is something I want to do. I stayed with them for almost 8 years, and every year I got more responsibilities. And the short answer of Director of Development is they turned to me one day and said, well, you went to Georgetown, you can read and write, right? Maybe you can help me with this appeal letter or this grant or whatnot. And wanting to do a good job is you start reading and learning and go to training and just trying to figure out how to do the job better. And 17 years later, this is what I'm doing.
Okay. So what would you say the number of lives that the shelter has helped over the past years that you've been there, if you have statistics?
Well, every year the number grows, but across our shelters, one of the things we look at is how many people in the past year went from homeless to a home with accessing our services. And this past year, it's well over 400. I don't have an exact number because our fiscal year ends June 30, and we're still trying to tally up and make sure that, occasionally we house people. It doesn't work out the first time they come back. We don't want to count them twice because until they're housed, we're not done. But last year, we moved 432 people from homelessness to a home. So
is this where people are coming directly to you, or are they coming to you through another program?
A combination. So that's like if they come to us through the shelter, if we meet them on the streets. Some people we house never come to shelter. It's all through a community interaction or a referral program.
Church or someone. Yeah.
Quite often, we have some housing programs of our own that's referral only because they're for people that have special needs. But we house a lot of people directly into small apartments, rooms to rent. We have a lot of connections with landlords and always looking for more people who are willing to rent to people who have been down on their luck. We try to do our best to guarantee security deposits of first month's rent to get people in, and some people longer rental assistance, but it's a combination. I really could take up the entire hour just talking about that. But it's any way that we can find and get people directly. And quite frankly, the 400 number, there are more people that come to us for help that get themselves out of homelessness themselves.
That's great.
They need some temporary help, and then one day they're gone, and we hear from them later, like, oh, I found a place. but they just needed someplace that night or that week.
Night, yeah.
And so we don't always know. People don't always pick up the phone. We said,
Right.
so where are you now? Oh, I'm fine.
So that number is probably higher.
It's probably higher, but we're not going
yeah.
to take credit for it.
Right.
We're going to take credit for the people that we know that we directly impacted and got them into housing. So I know it's bigger, but we got to give people the credit for what they've done.
I'm impressed. That's it.
Me too. Now, Jan, you and I have had the pleasure of crossing paths on more than one occasion with the Center for Employment Training and New Hope Housing, both on Partnership to Prevent and End Homelessness for Alexandria City. And I think as one of the New Hope Housing breakfasts as well. Director of Development is a big job. You're talking about these 400 plus people that have been served. What are some other outreach efforts that you do and your organization does to make sure you're financially strengthening New Hope Housing to continue and grow?
Well, I'd say a large portion of our funding is actually through contracts. So part of it is keeping up with our government partners and doing reports, and we have to do that. But also just getting the word out. There are historically, it was a number of churches that helped get us started in the 70s, and we make sure that we're reporting back. This is what we're doing now. This is what your money has helped. We try to tell specific stories about these are actual lives being impacted. I will talk to almost anybody, anywhere. We will go talk to pre-K, kindergarten, up through high school, college. We want people to know. We want someone to come back. It's a very powerful moment when we get a call from a parent that says, my 6-year-old heard about what you were doing today in class and wants to help end homelessness. What can we do? And we don't know what we're going to hear, but it's like let's get the word out every which way we can. Second is I think it's pretty incredible to choose to go to a homeless shelter to learn about what's going on rather than having to go there by circumstances. So we offer tours of our programs. Instead of just going out, we invite people to come in and see what we're doing. There are a lot of misconceptions, fears about what a shelter is, what it looks like, how dangerous they are. So we have twice-a-month tours of both a shelter and a housing program. We be very respectful of the residents and clients, and they can be where they want or not be there. But just come see what it is. Come see what it looks like. Because if something were to happen to you, to someone you know, and they go, I don't want to go to shelter because bad things happen there. That happens.
That has happened, yeah.
But if people know that, New Hope Housing or some of our partners are safe and are running good programs, because I've seen that, I went and visited and I saw it, that's very important too. We want people to know that we're here. And people who come see what we're doing often do become financial supporters because this is something I can get behind. This is something I trust.
Right.
That's great. And, coming from my career, I do have a little bit of an affinity for the employment aspect of it. I am curious, you mentioned you'll talk to anybody, you love stories. I'd love to hear a story. I'd love to hear a success story if you've got one, specifically in helping somebody who's gone through New Hope Housing gain that economic empowerment.
Sure. Well, I say it's like one of the biggest things. I give people all the credit for getting the job or getting the housing. They did it themselves. I mean, you have to know that you can do it. But every so often, you need an advocate. You need someone who knows the system, who knows the right words to say, who knows how to put a resume together, and to know what's out there. I mean, that's the biggest trouble. Is like what is available. And so a couple years ago, at our Alexandria shelter, our employment coordinator had arranged for a job fair. It turned into a resume skill building fair with Deloitte, and people came in and sat down with people. And before it, a woman was sitting there going I just got out of jail, I'm 58, no one's gonna hire me, what's going on? But she sat and she worked with someone who was listening and talked about possibilities and found resources and showed a job site, and she's like, I can do this. And after an hour, it's like, I'm ready to do this. And she spent the next 3 weeks applying for over 200 jobs and didn't get one. And so she went back to our employment coordinator and said, what do I do here? No one's going to hire me. 58, black, I'm an ex-con. What are people going to do? And he said, well, what did you do before you went to jail, which had been right before shelter? She said, I couldn't do anything. I was taking care of my mom. She was sick and slowly dying at home. I spent every day taking care of her, cleaning, taking care of her. And he's like, that's a job. I could get you a job taking care of someone as a caregiver. Yeah. She's like, who's going to hire me? He found a company that, so long as your crime wasn't violent, are willing to look past criminal histories. She had to take a test. The test was a 3-day course and a test, and it cost $350. A year before, our employment coordinator said, hey, Jan, I need money. What for? So when people need jobs and they need money immediately, we can pay for things. So a year before, we had started a fund called the Employment Assistance Fund, because we're not that creative, names. And we had $350 available. We said, we're going to invest in you. Pass this test. She came back,
wonderful.
Aced it, started work. That was on a Friday, started work on Monday. 2 months later, she's in an apartment of her own.
Wow.
amazing.
You just answered a question that I was going to ask later about if you help people who have been incarcerated and they come out, because a lot of times they really do have a hard time. Sometimes it's not able to go back home, you know, and they just end up on the street and back in trouble again. So you do work with...
Absolutely. Our director, Pam Michelle, who's been our director for 28 years, says, like, we're about hope and hospitality. And hospitality means open doors. It means welcoming whoever comes in where they are and saying, we're going to find you help. And so if people have been incarcerated, like, there are actually a fair number of people who work at New Hope Housing who are formerly homeless and formerly incarcerated, because we said we have to walk the walk. So absolutely, people who are facing multiple barriers, eviction, previous eviction, addiction issues, conviction, all sorts of, come to us. We really do want to help, and we know where the resources are.
Wow, that's great. It's really great. I have a question about services to your clients in the areas of housing assistance, educational opportunities, and counseling. Can you talk about those things?
I'll do my best. Again, time limits. Depending on what people need is where we're going to try to direct the resources. If someone just needs an opportunity to find a room to rent, which might be $500 or $600, they have the money, they just don't know who's renting. We do have resources from state, local, federal funding, private funding, to occasionally pay for security deposits of first month's rent, depending on the need in the area. We run out of resources. Our fiscal year starts July 1st. And so sometimes we've run out of these funds before the fiscal year is over. We're always trying to replenish. But we have a landlord housing specialist who's actually out there meeting with landlords, trying to say, like, we have people who might have barriers, who's willing to overlook them, we can guarantee for several months' rent. Isn't that a great thing? We have an employment coordinator who not only is working with volunteers to work with people in the shelter on resume building and how to interview, he's out meeting employers who are willing to overlook previous incarcerations or homelessness and actually hire people and bring them together. And actually, I definitely want to put a plug. We are going to have a community job and resource fair this year at South County Government Center on October 2nd. It is open to the public, and we are co-sponsoring with Offender Aid Restoration, OAR, the Fairfax chapter of NAACP, and the local supervisor, Dan Stork. And we're going to have both educational classes, and currently I think we're up to over 50 potential employers that will have booths to meet with people. So
please make sure I get an invitation.
Absolutely, we'll share that with you, and I'll give you the information to plug again at the end of the segment if you want. But I mean, the goal is, like, let's bring resources and people together as much as we can.
Right, right. Well, you know, we're just about out of time for a break. So let's take a break, but we'll be right back after these important messages. So don't touch that dial. Welcome back. You're watching Skills to Pay the Bills with our co-host, Kate Celius, and special guest, Jan Sacharko, Director of Development at New Hope Housing. Kate, I think you had some questions that you wanted.
I did. We were talking about, Jan, thank you, were sharing about some of the services that New Hope Housing provides for the community. What locations, what geographical locations can we see a New Hope Housing entity?
Sure. A number of our programs are in Fairfax County. We do operate in the City of Falls Church, City of Alexandria, and Arlington County as well. Two of our main shelter sites that perhaps people know the best, Kennedy Shelter, which is right outside Fort Belvoir, which is an adults-only shelter. We've been operating for about 30 years. Last October, we took over the Bailey's Crossroads Community Shelter, also an adult shelter, 50-bed shelter. We do partner with Rising Hope and a number of other churches for hypothermia-only programs, winter only. But we also, beyond our shelters and street outreach, we operate a number of housing programs ourselves. Many of them you won't see because we're not putting signs on them. We want to blend into the community. You know, these are formerly homeless people living in housing, so we don't want people to think like, well, there's the homeless program. You know, it is housing. People have apartments, they have leases, people pay rent. But we have group homes and private homes for people at different levels. So we have an apartment building with 20 units, all people formerly homeless with special needs. We have group houses for people who need round-the-clock care. But then we also master lease a number of units in the community. So you might actually be living in an apartment building where we have units that we are master lease for people who can't get, don't have the credit and can't get a unit of their own. I'm very excited something's going to be happening in the near future, and I'm going to take a second to plug, but there's construction going on in the Bailey's Crossroad community, and they're actually going to be building a new shelter and housing combined program for the fall of 2019, where the first 2 floors will be modern, state-of-the-art shelter, including hypothermia program, medical respite bids, really, really cool stuff going on there. But then the top 2 floors are actually going to be housing. They're going to be apartments, 18 units. So it's increasing our housing stock. And they're going to be doing the same thing with Kennedy Shelter and 2 other programs in Fairfax. We're really trying to up the housing stock, and Fairfax County has been an absolute amazing partner and supporter in making sure that we have resources.
Okay, very good. What are the requirements for entry into your housing unit? And one of the things I want you to talk about is when somebody fills out an application, how long does it take? Is there a long, waiting?
It's complicated for me to answer that, so I'm going to try to simplify as much as I can. As far as shelter goes, if somebody presents needing shelter in the middle of the night, we will shelter them. If we don't actually have the space, the next day we're going to look for available beds in the community.
Okay.
If it's a housing program where we will actually be the landlord housing them, all of those programs are by referral, and it's usually people who are on a by name list of homeless. It's what's called chronic homelessness. So that's people who have been homeless for a certain time period or repeatedly and have a disabling condition. So we don't just have general anybody can apply and get housing. This is a referral program really going after people who have no other alternatives because of their needs. But for the people that we actually house in the community, so long as they're receiving services from us, whether at shelter or outreach, we're constantly applying for housing, helping connect them to landlords, often paying application fees. Fairfax County in particular is trying to make it that if you need housing services, you don't have to go to shelter. You can be working with us and still not be in shelter. We try to keep you in housing, but we know that some people won't go to shelter. We encourage them to, but let's see what we can do to keep them from even having to enter shelter and get them into housing.
So let me see if I understand what you just said. If someone is already in a housing situation, but they need help, some of the programs that they can work with them, you still work with them?
Absolutely, and I have some numbers here, and I'll give them to you again if you can share. If you're in Fairfax County, they have what's called the 222 number. It's 703-222-0880.
I'll get that.
And that's general, anybody in Fairfax County. I need food, I need help, I need shelter, I need this, and they're going to try to point you to the most appropriate service. If you are in the city of Alexandria, they have the number, it's 703-746-5700. That's their homeless service assessment center. So if you're in a housing crisis, they're going to try to direct you to it. I have a number for Arlington as well, just because I try to be around, but 703-228-1300. I can't say that it's the golden ticket that you're going to have something immediately, but these are the best ways to find the resources in one place.
Right. It's a start. It's a great
Absolutely. And if we can prevent you from becoming homeless in the first place, it's better for you, it's better economically, it's better for everyone that we can keep you in housing or find suitable alternative before you actually end up losing everything.
So that's if somebody knows they're in that position, they should give you a call right away.
Absolutely.
So
I said
that's good.
By working as a community and having these access numbers, we're trying to prevent you from having to call this shelter, then call that shelter, then call that shelter, then call that shelter, spend the whole time being told, well, we don't have space. This number's really said, let's find something and let's work with you.
That's good.
Jan, a question. Do you accept in-kind contributions, food, other amenities, and what is your intake process for receiving those household items, for receiving that food?
Sure. I appreciate that question because the first thing I always tell people is like, dude, yes, please call ahead. Kind-hearted people show up, like, we want to give you things, we want to give this, we want to help someone, but sometimes we do not need them at that location for that population we're serving, and we don't, we want to provide good customer service and not tell you no, but if we have an adult-only shelter and you show up with kids' clothing, we definitely do not need that. And sometimes we feel inclined to say yes because the person says, but I really want to do this here. I say is if you call our main number, or if you have a nonprofit or organization that you really want to support, just call whatever number they have. You call our main number, there's an opportunity where it says press this number for donations. Tell us what you have. Because we have so many different sites, I'll tell you, one, if we need it, and two, what's the best location? Because I want you to go right to where it needs to be. We do accept furniture. We do accept some clothing. We almost always are trying to get new things for people. And we ask everybody to consider there's an organization called A Wider Circle calls Dignity Condition. For people who have been through some of the worst of their lives, we say it's about time they get something that's the best.
That's right.
So a chair that's missing a leg, or a shirt that's ripped, or missing buttons, or things that require a lot of repair. It's like that's not something that's going to make people feel good about what they just got. We want you to think is you're not just getting rid of stuff; you're giving someone a gift. And so, is it a worthwhile gift? And we have, just like many other organizations have, we have an Amazon wish list. So if you really want to get something and you don't even want to leave your couch, you can check out our wish list and order things like new sheets, new pillows, new toiletries. We have something we call our welcome home basket, where we figure if you were leaving shelter tonight for your own apartment, the things you need basically is I need a place to sleep, I'm going to need to cook breakfast in the morning, and I probably want to take a shower. So the list has stuff like new sheets, new towels, new toiletries, kitchen in a box. We figure it's like if you had a kid going to college, what would you put for their dorm room? Think about that. And that is just an absolutely wonderful gift to give someone where they're signing their lease, they don't even know they're going to get it, and then all of a sudden we show up with here's some stuff for your first night. And it's brand new. They get to take it out of the packaging. And we give them dish soap so they can wash it too. But it's very nice to do. And we will absolutely accept used items that are in good shape, but we do ask you to call ahead instead of just showing up.
I had a question about, do you work with law enforcement any or juvenile homes in your program?
We definitely try to coordinate.
You coordinate.
So we want, if there's a situation where there's an encounter with someone who's homeless, we hope that, arresting is not the first option. If someone can come to a shelter, if someone can connect to a resource, we definitely are trying to make sure that, people that we work with don't end up incarcerated.
Do you have law enforcement or agencies who will contact you, in
that,
behalf?
That has happened.
Yeah.
And we're a community organization. As big as we are and serving in multiple jurisdictions, each program tries to be a community organization. We want to know the local cops. We want to know the local firefighters. August 7th is National Night Out, which is started in 1984. It's a way for local law enforcement and people to get to know each other.
August 7th?
August 7th, Tuesday, August 7th. If that's not a Tuesday, then it's whatever Tuesday is next week. At Bailey's Crossroads, for example, we're going to have a cookout, and we've invited local law enforcement, we've invited local electeds to just come out. We want people to know. We don't want people to be afraid of police.
Right.
We don't want people to not know it. And we want people to, and again, we want people to visit the shelter as this is a place where people go for housing. That's our goal. Let's get connected.
Right. Kate, did you have?
Well, what advice would you give someone watching this program who may be experiencing homelessness or know someone who is experiencing homelessness?
Best thing I can say is please consider asking for help well before you think it's going to be too late. Like I've said before, there are plenty of people who show resilience. They pull themselves out of homelessness. They come to shelter because they need a safe place that night, but they get themselves out of it. But there are plenty of people who, they've heard the stereotype that if you're homeless, it's your fault, rather than there's all sorts of circumstances that lead to it. We say things happen. Call us. Call the numbers. Ask for help when you can get it. If there's a worry about paying rent this month, don't wait till the end of the month to try to seek help. Let's nip this in the bud. If you're in a place that's too expensive, let's try to find something else. If you're worried about your family, call the number and say, I need food or I need this. But just please don't wait. I shared the numbers at the beginning, and I'll definitely share them with you again. But it's a start. And like I said, it's not a golden ticket. Just because you call the number doesn't mean you got the help right away. It might be a process. So get started soon.
Sorry. When I heard you speak at the New Hope Housing Breakfast a couple years ago, I had heard for the first time you said people aren't homeless, they are experiencing homelessness. So I think what you said just resonated with me that yes, things do happen. So to not be afraid to reach out, to humble yourself and say, I need help.
Right.
Absolutely.
You've said a lot of things that have resonated with me, actually. But
I'll come back.
One thing, yes, please do. The one thing that I want you to talk a little bit about, we've got a couple of minutes left, is volunteerism.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is so important, and sometimes you just don't have enough people coming out. Tell us about
Again,
that.
on our website, which I know, first of all, I could take a volunteer to help with a website. I know it needs some work. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. If people want to mentor or tutor, if you have particular skills in helping with job search, putting together a resume, if you have any particular skill that might be helpful in helping someone get a job, that's fantastic. Counseling and therapists in different ways, we could definitely use some help for folks. We own a lot of properties, and there's a lot of yard work and maintenance to do sometimes, so we can take groups even to come do and pull some weeds. We had some this weekend, and with all the rain, you know, we got to move when it's sunny. There are lots of opportunities to make meals for people in our private homes who are maybe making microwavable meals. Make a home-cooked meal for people. It says if you check out our website, there is a how to help. There's a volunteer application. We have orientations at least twice a month, so that way you can come in and kind of learn why we do things the way we do, and then get connected. And once you're in as a volunteer, you can sign yourself up through our automated system and come on in whenever you can.
Wow.
And Jan, what is that website address?
www.newhopehousing.org. You click on the How to Help tab, and it actually will say volunteer application. Just keep clicking through until you fill it out.
Well, I tell you, it's been an eye-opener for me. I am so glad that you came here today
My
to
pleasure.
talk to us, and we thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
It's a very important issue, homelessness, and I mean, it's just something that goes right to the heart for me. So thank you so much, Jan.
Thank you for
coming
having me
out.
here.
We want to thank you today for watching our segment, Skills to Pay the Bills. Please check out the website of New Hope Housing, which is scrolling on your set right now. Eradicating homelessness is something that we can all appreciate, and New Hope Housing is working hard to make sure that no one is living on a sidewalk or an alley. Please tune in next week for another great segment on Skills to Pay the Bills. Bye-bye.